Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 92 of the Noclip podcast. Danny here. We're recording this on a whole new system. I get to play the intro music and do the intro like I'm a DJ again. I'm feeling
like I'm on the radio.
It's really strange. It's recording all our video as well, so we're going to get this up on YouTube with cameras if you're watching. Hello. We also tried to see if we could get this to Twitch stream at the same time, but it seems to have not wanted to do that. But that's fine. It's all about the progress. I'm here with Jeremy Jane and Frank Howley. Frank, how you doing? Why do you have a mini-me behind you on the desk, I think?
Yeah, I just collect weird shit, especially if it's from the late '90s Woodstock era. That's my peak. I realized we were gonna be video now, and it's like, oh, I can, I won't ham it up too much, but I have so much weird stuff here because this is the same.
Really? Points towards his background with an Amiga stuck to the wall.
I love it. I love
and
it.
meanwhile,
Yeah,
I'm just in an empty Macy's dressing room.
Love it.
My favorite is if it happens is Jeremy does this magic trick where he exits his window behind him and it's a whole nother room. It's the craziest effect.
It is funny when he goes through the curtain, yeah. All this stuff, which has been part of our culture here on the Noclip podcast for so long, is now possible thanks to the wonderful world of video. Hey, have you guys heard of video? We should do more video stuff.
Pivot to video.
Exactly, here on Noclip. We have a bunch of stuff to talk about today. I played Gotham Knights, which is out in a couple of weeks, I think. I did a preview of that. I didn't play Overwatch, so we're not going to talk about that. Nobody's played Overwatch, basically. It sounds like. Overwatch 2 came out yesterday.
Yeah, I played like a pinch, but I can talk about it.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the Zaum stuff, all the craziness over there, the Fandom, GameSpot Giant Bomb thing and all that sort of malarkey. But first, I feel like a perpetual part of this job is being like nervous. I feel I'm nervous I'm anxious about work stuff like on a daily basis, not a daily basis, but I have to interview people, and you don't want to mess up the interview, and you have to schedule the interview, and oftentimes when we're doing this, there's technical things you don't want to mess up, or you don't want to delete the wrong footage or any of that sort of stuff, or I was talking to Strezzel a couple of weeks ago, and it just freaked me out. After this podcast recording, I have to go to my daughter's school and talk about Ireland for 10 minutes. And I have been bricking it for like a week. I have to talk to a group of like 4-year-olds about Ireland. And I'm coming in with the energy of like a stand-up comedian who's doing their first 5 minutes or something. I'm so scared.
You could just riff it though. They're 4. You could just lie.
But you can't talk about like anything with substance. I can't like talk about Irish you have to talk about everything on such, you know what I mean? Like if you want to talk about like Irish sports or Irish food or like the language, there are layers to it you can dive into. But these children are like, I think 4 is the top. I think some of them might be like not even 3, and so you can't like get into any depth on anything. I
feel like you should just go for the deep end and go talk about Irish independence, talk about politics. I feel like that's what they want to hear. That's what the kids
Brits
want.
out, okay? Everyone in the class, on 3, Brits out. 1, 2, 3. Brits out!
Sing like an Irish rebel song, the whole...
My thought was your pitch is just leprechauns, fact or fiction, and then you just 10 minutes,
and you land on the fact.
Yeah, and you hide gold coins around the room, and
Oh, nice!
See.
I bring a box.
Yeah.
It's like Schrodinger's. It's like a Schrodinger's cat situation, but then at the end, I like hire a small person to jump out and like freak them out. That would be a real foundational memory for a lot of those children.
Yeah, that would be a core memory. Or just never open it and say that there's a leprechaun inside and like shake it around a bunch like there's something moving in there.
It's like screaming in there.
Yeah.
I'll get you. Let me out. Let
just
me out,
pitch
you
yourself up and put it on a little like Zoom recorder in there.
I could dress up my kid, dress up my daughter as one. That's the other thing, is that I don't want to fuck it up for her. She's not going to remember, but like she's been really excited about it for like a week, and like, oh yeah, you're going to come to school today and talk about Ireland, and maybe I'll say an Irish word and all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, or maybe you'll be so mortified by me that you'll never want to hang out with me ever again.
That's the worst case scenario, is that kids forever associate her with the Ireland presentation, you know?
The weird man who
Yeah,
came.
just
and
don't do
talked-
anything weird. Just be totally cool and normal and don't say anything weird.
I don't know what do 4-year-olds think is weird. Everything. They're 4.
Yeah, that's
Get
true.
Keanu Reeves to come out on stage. Yeah.
Do you think he could do it? Do you think even he has the charisma to like win over a bunch of kids? I tried to do like something physical, like I was gonna bring in like food or something. You know what I mean? Like Irish, like here's some soda bread and cheese and stuff like that. But of course, one of the kids is lactose intolerant, so just like wipe that one out. You know, you can't even soda bread's got like buttermilk in it, so you know, couldn't have anything with nuts, any of that sort of stuff.
Are there any like songs you could do? Like any? I'm trying to think of like child, like folks, like fun and games type things.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah, like Come Out You Black and Tans. That's a good one.
Or where
Kids
or where
love
was the
that
Wicker
one.
where was the Wicker Man set? Just do something like that. Just have a giant Wicker
I could
Man
start
set.
doing like I'll sing the national anthem in Irish and really freak them
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's
Kids
not
love
that cool.
Irish.
I
I
think
do
that's
have
a cool idea.
my wife is actually like winning the winner on this one. She found like a foam hurley and slitter, like the ball and stick we use for in the Irish sport hurling. So I'm gonna bring that. The Irish sport of hurling, not competitive vomiting. Yeah. That would be that again. Problematic core memories for these children that will probably create. So yeah, I guess tune into the podcast next week and I'll tell you how badly it went. I'm literally like, this isn't a bit. Like I'm more nervous about this than I was about, you know, interviewing 12 Crystal Dynamics people.
That's because kids are brutal. Adults are like, at least have the decency, especially in a professional setting, to be kind of polite. But kids are just
Yeah.
like brutally honest. Like kids will
That's
point at
the
you and be
thing.
like, "Your head is weird." And it's like, "Oh
Yeah.
fuck, my head is weird, dude."
What's wrong with your face? You know,
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not looking forward to it. Anyway, it'll be all over soon enough. Yeah, I'm approaching with the anxiety that I imagine people are when they're getting like an injection or going on a flight and they're scared of, you know, that type of thing. So we'll get through it together. Let's talk about business.
Yeah.
I love business, dude.
What business do you want to talk with? What I was about to say, what miserable business? What somewhat miserable, boring, God Almighty business do you want to talk about? Do you want to talk about the Zaum stuff, the Disco Elysium? Half of the creative team responsible for that first game getting kicked out, one by their perhaps by their investors. I have no idea. Or do you want to talk about the investors of or the buyers of GameSpot and Giant Bomb and Metacritic offloading them to the Wikipedia people? Which one should we go with first?
Let's do the fandom stuff first, maybe, because the
Okay.
Zaum thing is pretty hefty. I've prepared quite a thorough and impassioned report on the matter.
Okay. We will talk about games this week, I swear.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of this stuff. I don't know.
Oh,
I
the
just wanna
Zaum
talk
stuff
about.
is the Zaum stuff is about games in a way that I think is like cooler than talking about like playing a game. I think this is about like why games are important and cool. So
There
it's
you
gonna be
go.
good.
Okay, I can't promise the same for the fandom stuff. Okay, hands up. Who knows or cares about the fandom GameSpot Giant Bomb stuff? Do you guys are
I
you
know
all
about
interested in
it.
this?
I have freelanced for GameSpot, Fandom, and Giant Bomb.
Oh, yeah,
so
you're right.
They're all of my prior employers are
You
consolidating.
dirty boy, you get
Yeah.
around, don't you?
You know,
I
man.
have such a deep heart and love for game facts, and like I don't want them to screw up the history of FAQs and stuff in there. And it's like I felt like that was such a like forgotten website, and I pull that up every week, like because especially even with Noclip or streaming, we're always going into old games. So I used game facts yesterday for Black and White, so it's like don't touch the site at all. Like crap.
If
Yeah.
they fuck with GameFAQs, that will be the burning of the Library of Alexandria for
Yes.
ASCII art.
Is that the name? Don't fuck with GameFAQs is the name of this
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah, seriously,
yeah.
that's all I care about.
So basically, the long and short of this is that GameSpot, Giant Bomb, Metacritic, GameFAQs. Am I forgetting anything? TV Guide, I think, is part of that. I don't think Urban Baby made the cut here. A bunch of old CBS Interactive properties, and myself and Jeremy worked at GameSpot, which was owned by CBS Interactive. They have been they were sold to Red Ventures a number of years ago, in a somewhat dramatic turn for fans of GameSpot and mostly Giant Bomb, because that has a big community associated with it. They have basically offloaded those to Fandom, which is the website which is also based in San Francisco. That I believe it was originally Wikia or something, but they ingested Wikia at one stage. It is a big Wikipedia community website. They're sort of like, if you type in a video game name and guide, you're probably going to get the Fandom link right away. They're big on SEO. They're fairly big on ads as well on their site. It's not necessarily a great experience, especially on mobile. But in many ways, this is somewhat of a better fit, probably, for GameSpot and Giant Bomb. And as Red Ventures basically bought there was a $500 million deal that they bought. It was mostly for CNET, which is the big, consumer electronics website. It's really big, brings in lots of traffic. There's a couple of B2B businesses in there too, like ZDNet and other ones, B2C stuff. So business to consumer, business to business, that type of thing. This was a $50 million deal to offload the game's wing, which Red Ventures kind of, from what I have guessed from doing some freelance work for Giant Bomb over the past couple of years, and being close to a lot of the folks over there, that I think they were decent masters. They didn't mess with them too much. They gave them the opportunity, they gave them investment, but ultimately the games business wasn't their jam, and it wasn't much of a fit. So on paper, Fandom's kind of a better fit, wouldn't you say, Jeremy?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it definitely is more games related. Yeah, in my head, Red Ventures bought like a used car that seemed really cool, and then they've been like swapping out parts ever since. But yeah, no, I mean, to be determined how it affects those individual companies. It's kind of, that stuff is like so abstracted to me, the way that management stuff, trickles down into the day-to-day lives of the people who actually make, content and videos and write up stuff and manage the site. So it's kind of hard for me to predict how it'll affect anything.
Yeah, and I've been trying to do that myself, trying to put myself in that situation. The world of video game publishing is miserable. Like, it's of owning video game websites. IGN have figured it out. They've got they've diversified themselves. They have loads of different platforms. They publish stuff everywhere. They are kind of first to market with a bunch of developers and publishers and stuff. GameSpot for my entire life has always been a company that I'm not sure if GameSpot has ever made money in the time that I was there or since. I don't know, but that was always my inclination. Giant Bomb, on the other hand, in my mind, had always made a bit of money, but nothing near what corporate media and media in general has been. We see it with the Embracer stuff in games, right? This consolidation stuff has been existing in media for much longer than it has been in games. So it's very hard to run an independent, small thing, because eventually someone comes knock on your door to buy you. And it's happened. Noclip, we have had offers over the years as well, because it's just part of the media landscape, the corporate landscape that exists. My feeling on this one is that first of all, I think it must be so annoying. It's annoying to me as a Giant Bomb fan. And I mean, I am on the site. I have been on the site a bunch too, but like, it's kind of exhausting, when you just want to enjoy a website, and like, same as me as a GameSpot fan, when you just want to like enjoy the fruits of the site, to be in this constant cycle of somebody, and it's like your brother bringing home a new partner every Thanksgiving or something. You just at a certain point, you just stop asking for their name. It's like, don't worry, it'll be someone else next year. So that's kind of my first feeling about it. And then my second is that, like, I don't know if either site is in a great spot in terms of like long-term what they end up being. I can see Fandom needing content. I get that. They've had a couple of mergers over the past couple of acquisitions over the past couple of years in the content world. I think they tried to spin up their own video stuff a number of years ago, Jeremy, right? They had somebody who used to work for GameSpot, I remember, was over there for a very brief moment in time trying to spin up some type of content thing, and then it did not last, I think, a couple of weeks. But they're interested in it. I think GameSpot's a good asset in terms of news coverage, previews, access to like E3, stuff like that like Fandom can't get the public to make, because Fandom's a company that basically is user generated content. You can't get access to that type of stuff. You can get like guides and like community content, wiki content, that obviously is going to exist in communities rather than at a publication, because GameSpot has to cover every game. It can't like spend, it can't have two people working on the Pokemon beat for 5 years. You know what I mean? So that's never going to work. But in terms of access to those things and driving traffic to Fandom, I can totally see that. I worry about the video stuff because Fandom is not a company that video's expensive. Like we know that. Giant Bomb knows that. GameSpot knows that. Video teams are expensive, and if you can't get the return on investment, and I think the beauty of being part of a big organization like CBS Interactive is that you can kind of fly under the radar in terms of how much your headcount is costing you. And I think at Red Ventures that was probably also the case. And I'm not sure if Fandom is at that level where they're going to be willing to carry a large headcount of people, engineers, video people, if there's not a return on that investment, especially in San Francisco. You have to pay people quite a lot. You don't have to do that if you operate a business that is crowdsourcing information, or if you're producing text, like a lot of big news websites generally are remote. Eddie McCoo's been running the news beat over at GameSpot for years. He's moved continent twice in the years we were there, right? So you can do that if you're doing text. You can't really if you're doing video, quality video. So I'm like, I don't know. I'm very close to most, if not all, of the folks over at Giant Bomb currently. There's a few of the new folks I don't know all that well, but from a media perspective, I'm not overly. I think in a way those sites could fuck around and fly under the radar. It's the double-edged sword of, I don't think they ever got the attention. GameSpot certainly never got the attention at CBS Interactive that it kind of needed. CNET was always the golden goose. I think at Red Ventures, with all that happened at CNET over the past couple of years, I'm not sure if you guys have so they've tried to kind of monetize that site in a way. I'm not sure if it's working out exactly. I have no idea, but I think it's a much bigger thing for them to worry about. So the game stuff they didn't worry about, and in a way, I think that benefited Giant Bomb at Red Ventures and at CBS, that I'm not sure if that's going to be the case of Fandom. And also, from the GameSpot perspective, I do worry that this could easily pivot them in a direction. It all depends on what Fandom want to do. So I don't know. Who knows? Nobody knows what Fandom has planned for this, for these properties. But I'm not overly optimistic, maybe, is the way to say it.
Best case scenario, it's kind of just instability or unpredictability for the people who work there, because it's like a sea change, and like you were saying, it's anyone's guess what'll happen, because it's about when they take a look at they get all the numbers in and they're like, oh Jesus Christ, like right. Like need to like slash this or like focus on this or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I feel for all of the people that are our peers and friends and stuff at all these places, and hope the best for them and hope things go in a positive direction.
The two of us have been on that side of the there was always, I don't know about you, I don't know, Jeremy really fucked around at GameSpot in a way that I love. I don't know if we've ever talked about that. Can we talk about your 4-day week thing?
Yeah, for sure.
This was amazing. I can't believe you pulled this off.
So when we were at GameSpot, I had been working there for over a year, but less than 2, and basically was like, it was a really good job, and it paid pretty good. It was the best paying job I'd had up till that time, but ultimately, commuting.
We're just saying something.
Which is actually, it's not saying a lot, because my previous job paid me horribly.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly. But let me clarify for anyone who's listening. So I at some point was like, commuting from the East Bay to San Francisco, or I was living in San Francisco, but commuting either way, 5 days a week, working all day, coming home, being exhausted, having 2 days to bounce back. As anyone who's worked a job knows, it saps the life out of you, and you have very little energy for other things. And as someone who went to film school, and like my creative life is very important to my sanity. Working at GameSpot, while a very good job, was not feeding me creatively, let's say. They gave me a lot of creative freedom, and I got to work on a lot of cool projects, but interspersed with all of those was a lot of like, hey, can you do this like news update? Can you do, just work stuff? It's part of having a job. And so I figured if I was working 4 days a week instead of 5, that I would have more. I'd have a day every week at least extra to focus on my own creative stuff and figure out kind of what I wanted to do as a filmmaker. And so I asked my manager, and he was like, "I can't do that for you. I can't give you that."
Sir, you work for CBS.
Yeah, sir, you work for CBS. Please don't ask for a 4-day work week, a thing that like unions have to fight for. So I went to his boss, and she said I can't do that. And so I went to her boss, and he was like, "Why do you want that?" And I basically explained what I just explained to you guys, and he was like, "Yeah, I don't care. Sure, whatever."
He's a good dude.
So, he is a good dude, yeah. So that I was working a 4-day work week for the last several months I worked there, and then I ended up quitting anyway. So, fuck
It was
me.
unreal. I could not believe you did it. It was like the balls.
I was
to
like
ask.
23.
Totally. Like in an industry that is like, I don't know. It feels when you're in that world that you are largely replaceable. I'm not.
Yeah.
Employing people takes time and money that managers don't want to do. But like, I fucked around a little bit and tried to get my raises if and when which was hard because I was on like a visa. I couldn't,
Yeah.
if they fired me, I had to leave the country. So I wasn't standing on, had much of a leg to stand on. But yeah, I thought that was pretty awesome. And again, like, yeah, I'm just, I guess, what do you feel about the fandom stuff? Like, you're probably not as in the weeds on the Giant Bomb stuff as I am, and you're somewhat divorced from GameSpot, although we've loads of friends who still work over there.
Yeah, I basically I despite having done one big gig for Fandom, which the impression I got is like they were trying to test out the waters on video even back then, and this was after I quit GameSpot, so this must have been 2015. It was pre
Right.
Noclip for sure.
Okay.
And I shot a mini documentary for them, but I got the sense
yeah.
that they did not have very much experience doing video. I don't know if that speaks to like one individual producer who I was working with. I don't know if that speaks to the company. I have no idea. This is not making a larger statement about Fandom because I really don't know. But I got the sense that the people I was working with were very passionate about video, but not very not very aware of like the amount of work it takes. I felt like they expected a lot for very little. So who knows if that speaks to the larger company culture? I really have no idea. But yeah, ultimately the bottom line is that I hope it works out well for the people that we care about at those various companies.
Yeah. We'll have to see. I feel like the first whatever, it probably takes months to close this stuff off, transfer people over onto one company to another. There'll likely be, a cooling off period then as well. So I don't think anything immediate will happen. But like, I don't know about you. I always felt like we've talked about, what was it, the fan bite stuff a number of weeks ago, and they had layoffs, or most of the staff has basically been axed. Future Publishing as well. And it's funny. I always feel some way around these things where, and it's very easy for me to say this now, especially from this like position of privilege of running a company and being, crowdfunded for 6 years. But dude, I never relaxed. I always, the minute I got into GameSpot, which was my dream, I was like, I need to have an exit strategy now. Like I feel like that is the perpetual life of when you work in games coverage, and it's kind of like I feel like when you sign up to being a games journalist, the first pamphlet they should give you is like how to make it so that when you're in your 30s, you're not stuck or fired. Because like I was a fan of that site for years, and I'd seen it happen, and I'd seen people get axed out of nowhere, especially in California where it's an at-will state and they can just fire you for no reason, or you have to give a reason rather. And half the people who worked at GameSpot ended up working in PR for a games company, or production, or development in the case of Greg Kasavin or something like that. And I always wanted to keep doing the games coverage, so it was kind of like, how do you do that? So in a way, I'm not sure if this will be anything new to those people. I feel like most folks in that world are thinking about that. And like we have friends, half the folks we worked at in the video team at GameSpot now work for Twitch.
Yeah. The sword of Damocles is hanging over your neck no matter who's holding it.
Yeah. I think it's harder when you're an on-screen personality. Only. I'm not saying that in a defamatory way, but like we always had video production in the back pocket. You know what I mean? I mean, in the back pocket for me, it was your front pocket. 'Cause, you know,
It was
you had
behind the
hosting in
camera,
the back pocket.
but it was in my front pocket.
Yeah, I mean, the stuff you produced or you hosted on GameSpot was dope. The
Thanks,
Alien
man.
VR
Likewise.
video and
They showed that on the Joe Rogan podcast.
did they really?
Yeah, they watched that on the Joe Rogan podcast, the Alien Isolation VR thing.
Holy shit! This is the second biggest podcast you've been on.
Yeah.
Well,
True.
I don't
True.
know. That's amazing. Yeah, it's a funny old world. So yeah, I'm with you. Best of luck to everyone. You know, I think I am baseline pessimistic about this stuff anyway. I'm baseline pessimistic about, you know, I think when you also operate a crowd-funded company, you're pessimistic, because if you're optimistic, one day, you know, you look at the bank account and it's empty. So I'm always like proactive. I always feel like people think Noclip's about to shut down, because I'm always doing like videos where we need funding, and like, you know, our funding was better for sure, like during COVID, and we go up and then it trickles down a bit, but it comes from a place of being proactive, of being like pessimistic and about stuff and having to like fight for it, especially as like there's a bunch of us who pay our rent through this thing now. So yeah, best of thoughts with everyone over there. Hope the transition's easy. Hope you can hope everything's okay, and if it's not okay, I hope you can figure out an exit strategy. You know, seems kind of rote at this stage to say start a Patreon, because that's what fucking everyone's doing. It was so much cooler 6 years ago when we did this. Now Patreon's now become, I feel like it's been tainted with this like, oh, you're on Patreon, I guess your job didn't work out.
I just picture us busking on the corner with like a guitar and a tambourine.
Yeah, but that's what it felt like before as well, but it felt cool. Like we were the only buskers in town.
Now
and
we're in
it's-
Nashville and everyone's busking.
100%. We are, yes, and everyone is also very good.
Yeah.
It's because it's Nashville, not our podunk town wherever we were. Yeah. All right, enough business stuff around that. Let's talk about some more business. Do you guys ever remember Speak, the Hungarian rapper?
No, what? Is that the
Yeah.
full name? Is the name Speak and they are a Hungarian rapper?
No, Speak is the name of the Hungarian rapper.
Okay.
I see Frank nodding, so he's.
Yeah.
You should check that out. It's he sings about, it's an anti-war song, and it is brilliant. But at one point he said, you know, that there's a sort of a chorus in it, and they say, you know, sometimes people make a war, because English is not their first language. Make a war, don't know what it's for, and then he says business. So
I do know that song.
You do?
Wait,
Okay,
why have I
yay!
heard that? Maybe I feel like you've probably played it for me. I feel
It's
like we
an-
were probably crushing beers on a trip one time, and you played that song for me.
Sometimes, yeah, in between,
Cans of Tyskie.
and Nirvana, the band, the show,
Yeah, true.
which comes up every time now. I'm gonna open a window. It's getting dark here. But anyway, we're here to talk about business. Jeremy, first point of order on the business.
Yeah.
Zaum, ZA/UM. What do we call the Disco Elysium people?
I have heard people say Zaum and Zaum. I believe it is Russian for both from the mind and for the mind is what I have read. I do not speak Russian, so
How
apologies.
Rasputin of you.
Yeah, exactly. Despite my Russian heritage, I do not speak any Russian. So Zaum is the name of both a cultural association as well as a video games development company.
Okay.
The cultural association precedes the video game company. Essentially, and this is a huge part of the reason why Disco Elysium is such a fantastic game and is so important to so many people, is that essentially way before it was a video game, or before it was a game studio, Zaum was a cultural association, a bunch of Eastern European artists and philosophers and painters and ne'er-do-wells who essentially were all kind of just hanging out, trying to figure out things, like talking about politics, debating, and trying to essentially find their way in the world. There's a long write-up from Robert Kurbitz that I'll read a little excerpt from later. But essentially, he says that they, at some point, while watching a bunch of their peers like go off to college and be able to buy computers to play Baldur's Gate 2 on, they were left just drinking and smoking cigarettes and freezing in their heavy overcoats and trying to figure out. So he essentially says that at some point they decided they had to become artist people of some sort to support themselves. And so in doing so, they created Elysium, which is... So part of the reason, let me stress this like as strongly as fucking possible. Elysium is a world building project. Like Disco Elysium is a video game that takes place in the world of Elysium, but outside of the video game of Elysium, or of Disco Elysium. Elysium is a Hegelian world building project. It is an attempt to take everything that is important in history and to rewrap it into fictional places and fictional terms, and essentially to reimagine history in a way that highlights everything that is like important and beautiful and tragic and heroic about history. This is like a Marxist philosophical experiment of world building, not just
Right.
a video game. So there is a quote where Robert Kurvitz. So I believe this was from the art book that came out with Final Cut, with the Disco Elysium Final Cut, not the video editing software Final Cut, and he talks about paracosms. And so he says that in child psychology, a paracosm is a mental construct developed by often lonely children and early teenagers. It is a fantasy world secluded from ours, featuring new words for common and novel phenomena, intricate taxonomies of nations, animals, etc. Emily Bronte had one, Henry Darger had one. Children tend to forget their paracosms as the real world imposes its terms around 13 to 15. That did not happen to Elysium. Elysium was always going to be massive, large enough to blot out our entire reality, messianic, transatlantic. Elysium, the crown of the world. Elysium, the real world is an embarrassing fantasy construct, and Elysium is real. So, Elysium is a world-building project that Robert Kurvitz and friends have been working on since they were age 15.
Wow, okay.
So it precedes the start of development of the game by 14 years. Since the year 2000, they've been working on this. And so let me get to the news segment so if you can figure out why we're talking about this. So Martin Luiga, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing the name, Luiga, was one of the 3 founding members of Zaum, of the Cultural Association, not the video game studio. He's referred to in Robert Kurvitz's words as a first phase Elysium builder, which I love. So Martin Luiga, on October 1st, 4 days ago as of recording, posted a Medium blog post that essentially was announcing the dissolution of Zaum, the Cultural Association. But in his post, he also mentioned that Robert Kurvitz, Helen Hinper, and Alexander Rostov, 3 of the key members of Zaum, the video game development studio, and also 3 of the earliest members of Zaum, the Cultural Association, had departed from the video game studio late last year. This was covered in an Estonian newspaper that is behind a paywall late last year, but the news kind of didn't really make it to the West until this weekend.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, which is insane. So, and also, it's worth noting that Martin Luiga posted this from a psych ward in Tallinn, the capital of Estonia. So,
Tallinn.
Tallinn? My
Yeah,
apologies.
is he actually? Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was. I saw that, but I wasn't sure if that was. I've never completed Disco Elysium, and I don't know too much about the Cultural Association, so I didn't know if that was legitimate or if it was part of some
Right.
other thing. So that is actually the case.
I have been.
Or-
I was aware of him, but not following him very closely before this. But I've been following him since, and he has
Okay.
posted a bunch of pictures from what looks to be a psych ward and talked
Okay.
about like his mom visiting him and stuff. So it seems like it's serious. There were a few people speculating that it was a dark joke. I think it's actually serious.
Okay.
So
Our thoughts with him then as well.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And also he is, not just a member of the Zaum Cultural Association, but also contributed to the game Disco Elysium. So, so this announcement, which was kind of like a footnote of the dissolution of Zaum, the Cultural Association, caused an immense, hubbub, I'll say, I guess, because Kurvitz, Rostov, and Hinper are 3 of the most key members of the creation of Disco Elysium. Robert Kurvitz is the lead writer and lead developer. Alexander Rostov is the art lead. He's an oil painter. He painted and created, did concept art, painted textures, painted like a ton of the world basically. Sort of created the aesthetic feel of Disco Elysium. And Helen Hinper joined Zaum when she was only 14 years old. Robert Kurvitz refers to her as a child prodigy in writing. And
Zaum, the Cultural Association, or the
Cultural Association.
Okay.
But was also one of the lead writers on Disco Elysium. And I think she was a writer on the original version, lead writer on the final cut. I think there's some distinction there. There was also, I've seen people going over LinkedIn profiles and social media from other people who were key members of the team. It seems like there have been other departures, but I will stick to these three because they're both three key members, and also they're the three that are the most... the ones that I can verify, essentially.
Yeah.
Alexander Rostov, one of the three, posted afterwards and confirmed that this was true. So the reason that this happened is kind of up in the air. It seems like the people who have departed are not able to talk about it, though there has not been a statement declaring that much. But Martin Luigia, this is his quote. Someone asked him basically, like, was this stakeholders forcing them out, investors, like corporate heads, whatever? And he said that it was the doing of the investors, essentially. The people who funded Disco Elysium were kind of, by his claims, kind of like crooked Estonian investors, one of whom had been tied up in an embezzlement case, I believe, or a fraud case previously. So the quote from Martin Luigia is, "Imagine a kleptomaniac, if you will, only that instead of stealing, say, a lollipop, they take pains to manipulate dozens of people to steal in the end from themselves, just because they happen to be very proficient in that kind of an operation. It's what they always do, really. One of them was the first guy to be convicted for investment fraud in Estonia. All the same, I don't know if we would have managed to get the initial investment without these people." So that was in the comments of his Medium blog post. Essentially.
So it's worth maybe mentioning here, and we've talked. Actually, there's a project we're working on at the moment where we're talking about the business side and publishing and all the VC and all that sort of stuff. And I was having a conversation with somebody. I can't say who, but I can't say who now. I will be probably next year. Where we were talking about the venture capitalist angle, because generally, you know, there are video game publishers that exist out there. You sign deals with them. Deals historically would have been like worse than they are now, let's say, where you would have to hand over your IP maybe in the deal, but the publisher would basically, you know, in the 90s and early aughts, they were the channel to physical and the channel to getting on certain digital stores. You can do that independently, fairly, not easily, but like it's manageable now in a way. But, you know, more modern deals would have, you know, better revenue splits, but would still have stuff like, you know, the publisher will take all of the profits until they recoup their initial investment twice over, maybe. They invest $2 million in the project. If the game sells 5 million or makes 5 million in revenue and they have like a 2x recoupment clause, then the developers won't get any money until it hits like 4 million in sales, and then 4 to 5 they'll get like whatever 50%, 60%, 70%, whatever way they cut it. These days the deals tend to be better because there's folks out there like Annapurna and Devolver, and you know, not that I don't know any about all their deals either, but like it's sort of, there's a bit more competition out there, especially for indies, so it's kind of leveled the playing field a little bit. But there has been this other movement going on where people have gone to venture capitalists, and the venture capitalists in many ways, it's sort of like it can work out way better or it can work out way worse. It can work out way better because they are basically investing in the studio, not the game. So they're more interested in long-term, you know, building out IPs, building a team that is happy and will work on multiple games that will get better. Look at a Supergiant situation. They don't have any venture capitalists as far as I know. I think they're totally independent. But just look at like how much better their games have gotten because they've all worked together, you know, continued over years. The problem with the VC stuff is they own a portion of the company and they can fire you. So if they own too much of the company, which, you know, seems like an easy thing to happen, they can fire you off of your own company. So you have to be very careful about that type of thing. And I was talking to somebody about this a few weeks ago, and then this broke, and I was like, well, I guess there it is. That's the rub of the green. I think I saw in that post as well that he said that the game probably wouldn't have been made without that investment anyway, right?
Yeah,
that was,
for sure.
That was kind
they
of
were like a bunch of broke artists, so
right.
They definitely needed that money. Yeah, so it's kind of like a deal with the devil, where it's like,
right.
Disco Elysium wouldn't exist without that money, but also, you know, it's a Faustian bargain to
capitalism, eh?
Yeah, no, exactly. Honestly, it's funny.
It's almost on the nose, isn't it? This whole thing.
It is so on the nose.
Like, is it a bit? Because it's a fantastic piece of performance art. If it is,
I was gonna say this is the best organic ARG to ever emerge out of video games. Is that a game about how capitalism and neoliberalism crushed a communist revolution and ruined the world, then was taken and co-opted. I mean, that's a huge theme of the game. Is that what capitalism does so insidiously? Is that it takes any element of pushback against capitalism and it co-ops it into a commodity. It's like a controlled opposition. The philosopher Mark Fisher, who I've mentioned on this podcast before, talks about Kurt Cobain and how one of the great paradoxes or contradictions of Kurt Cobain's life was that he was this anti-capitalist, anti-status quo person who was saying fuck the world, and then MTV was like, oh, fuck the world, that's catchy, we should like put that on t-shirts and sell records and stuff.
It's
and
the
so
Charlie Brooker, the Black Mirror guy sticking the shard to his neck thing.
Yeah,
you know what
totally.
I mean? It's which in many ways, Disco Elysium, of course, because it's part of the world we live in, is also a victim of, because it won awards and it was, it benefited from the channels of communication that we have that are monetized in that way. It's but anyway, sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, it's that's all relevant, but it's this kind of tragic, and in some ways, I wonder if. I mean, there's a world. This is my silver lining a little bit, is that there's a world in which any sequel to Disco Elysium that was born out of the kind of like comfort and status quo of a highly successful piece of commercial art may not have lived up to the legacy of Disco Elysium 1. And so while I'm not saying that this is a good thing by any stretch of the imagination, if this pushes Robert Kurvitz and company to go and to do their own thing and make another game that is a response to kind of, being fucked over by the world, I mean, that could be a great game. Like some of the best art ever made is in response to tragedy and not from a position of comfort. So while this is not a good thing, it may yield yet another banger of a anti-capitalist video game, perhaps. Obvious speculation. Couple more details before I wrap up the story, and then I would like to read a very short thing from Robert Kurvitz that almost made me cry the other night. So Zaum is also hiring. If you go on the jobs post on their website, they're hiring a lead game designer, which is like a little salt in the wound. But there's another job post. They're hiring a sales and monetization strategist with a focus on live services content.
Jesus Christ.
And so if you,
come on,
I know, dude.
This is parody.
It is literally parody. If there is a world in which I'm buying Kitsuragi bucks with real money and like if I have to buy Real with real money for Disco Elysium 2, I am going to do something that I can't say on the podcast.
It's gonna be a pachinko version of it hitting the
exactly.
Although here we go. This is the problem. Capitalism co-opting things.
Yeah.
I would you play a tappy game of Disco Elysium?
I wouldn't. And in fact, here's part of the complication of this is that another statement from Martin Louis just said that I think his words were the game might come out as intended and be sweet enough. It was something, I'm paraphrasing, but it was something like that. And so I wonder if how much of the writing for the sequel was done before this departure. I wonder if there's a sequel, how much of, like, will it be the vision of these people who've departed or whatever? I will feel very conflicted about paying for it. There's been a lot of discussion on Twitter about this has been around supporting the devs who are still at Zaum, because a lot of them 100% did work in Disco Elysium.
Yeah, those are loud, quieter elements of this battle that shouldn't be disregarded. Is that yes, there were more people who worked on the original game, and there are more people working on whatever they're working on now, who, as you said, are probably responsible for much of what's going on, and also probably just as equally stuck in the job they have. If people, it's not as if, like, especially when you go into Europe, it's not as if you can float around all the time to different places and work. If you're not in, if you're not in the Schengen zone, first of all, which presumably they are, but if you're not, if English is not your first language, there's a million different barriers that exist there that don't in a massive workforce like the United States. And not to say that even in the US you can't even float around, because it costs money to live in certain cities and all that sort of stuff. But sorry, I digress. You go on.
Yeah, no. It's important to stress, though, because I think that I've seen a lot of unnuanced takes from both sides where people are like, fuck Zaum and everyone there, and then other people saying, like, no, we need to support everyone at Zaum still, because some of them still worked on Disco Elysium. I think the nuanced take is that you need to be ruthless with systems and compassionate to individuals. I think it's important to be to hold a company accountable for forcing out people who, I mean, this is a world building project that Robert Kurtz has worked on since he was 15 years old.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
a killer.
If the intellectual property rights remain with Zaum, that's fucking heartbreaking. Like, this is like they were doing pen and paper campaigns, tabletop campaigns with this world of Elysium when they were like starving artists as like teenagers and young 20-somethings. This is like this, something of this magnitude, this world building project can only be born out of true love, out of pouring yourself into something like this. And so to see it taken and be controlled by people who did not, create it, or who did not like live and breathe it is heartbreaking to me. So I think it really is a true tragedy in many ways. And so, yeah, so we'll see what comes of this. Hopefully there will be a statement. Zaum's statements so far have been very kind of like PR speaky.
It's a company.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't expect companies to do anything else. They're companies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's
profit motive is the ultimate corrupting force.
But you're right in that, like, and in a way it reflects what we were talking about, the GameSpot Giant Bomb Fandom Red Venture stuff before, is that like it sucks that you have to consider, you have to like use your heart and your head when you're thinking about these things. You know, you want to love people for the art they make, but there's always that element. It makes me really fucking grateful to all of our patrons that I don't have to lie out of, talk out of the side of my face half the time, or like, we can be as brutally honest as people give a crap to hear. But yeah, and it's also like the tragedy of like the worst part of this to me is that they probably needed that money to get the audience for this, which is just a rotten byproduct of the world we live in, that they had to let down their guard. Like, if they did lose all this sort of stuff, like, you gotta be careful when you're doing this sort of thing. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to victim blame here by any means, and it sounds like they probably had very little choice, and also we do not know the details of all this sort of stuff. But like, anything I have made, lock it up. Like, just make sure there's no way that anyone can use it against you, if you're able to do it, of course. And maybe they weren't able to, and maybe this was always hanging over them and they couldn't retroactively get out of it. I don't know what the story is, but just even not to victim blame, but even just as a cautionary tale to anyone else who's listening to this, like, just lock your stuff up. Do not hand it over. Do not sell your IPs. Do not, if you're working for a company, know exactly what we've heard of all the stories of people working on their own projects, their own games at a game studio, and then the game studio had a clause in their contract saying that they own anything they work on, even outside work hours. Like, you just don't assume people will be cool, and don't assume that people 10 years from now who then own that, who are now in the job that the person who hires you was 10 years later, will also be as cool and be connected to you. Yeah, because it's just assume, it's like my pessimism again. Assume everyone is out to get you.
Yeah, it sucks to have to be that paranoid, but like another kind of similar one-line anecdote is that there's a developer that I'm Twitter friends with who made Desktop Goose, which was like a little like low poly goose that walks around on your desktop.
Awesome.
When he was like a teenager, 18, 19, 20, something like that, and someone squatted the domain, bought it out from under him, and then was like, I'll sell it to you for $80,000. So yeah, it's a cautionary tale. Even if you're working on something you're passionate about, even if you don't think it's going to blow up, it might be worth it to hit up the patent office about that screenplay you're working on. So let me just close with a quote from Robert Kurtz, because I will never be able to do justice to his work any better than he can, because he is a fantastic writer. Where do I cut this? This is if you want to read this is the outro to the Disco Elysium art book. It's online. It's worth reading. It's incredibly beautiful. But let me just read the outro here. Elysium is a collection of ideas into which we poured all of our love of the world and its history. It's what we think is worthwhile in all this, recollected, resequenced, and reconceptualized. Its people are heroic even when they're jokes. Its failures are majesty and terror. It's large. It is a geopolitical dream seen by non-entities, nobodies from nowhere. Its value is inversely proportionate to our own size. So far, we've only managed to show you a tiny, insignificant corner of it, the district of Martinez in Revachol West, on Insulinde. I cannot begin to tell you how introductory it is. It's small, a matchbox world. It's all we had money for. Yet because of you, you angel, you legend, our comrade in arms, because of your interest in our idea, we get to see more of it. Jamrock, I hope, and then on to the other Isolas. Thank you, and we hope you enjoy the final cut. Robert Kurvitz. So, it's heartbreaking. Like, I almost fucking cried reading that the other night. This is a world building project about a love of history and a love of the world, and rewrapping all of it in a new package so that it can be appreciated and examined from a new perspective. And the last thing I'll say is that Robert Kurvitz did write a book that takes place in Elysium in 2013 called Sacred and Terrible Air, and it was not published by Zaum, the video game developer. It was published by Zaum, the Cultural Association. So there is a world in which either he can also make stuff in Elysium still, or I don't know, Estonian copyright law, IP law. But we'll see what happens. Or maybe he can call it like Elysian with an N and do, But I hope we get to see more of Elysium, and I hope it is done in the proper way by people who care about it and people who have shepherded this vision since they were 15 years old.
Yeah, hopefully it's an Andrzej Sapkowski situation like The Witcher, where they own their game rights, but he's still able to get his scratch from the Netflix series. Thanks very much for reporting on that, Jeremy. I think in a way, this is like maybe my cynical sort of, cynicism coming at my cynical cynicism. Also, can I just, for people who are watching the video version of this, it is very funny to be talking about this anti-capitalist project while I'm drinking a big gulp over here. I think it's just a nice
big gulp is for the people, man.
Exactly. Yeah. Visual. Yeah. Hey, it's pretty cheap. It's pretty affordable. That
there you go.
gas station soda. Is that oftentimes movements like this need a counterpoint, and you'll find like it's been very interesting being a European where a lot of these ideas are not particularly out there, and moving to Europe where socialism, communism, anti-capitalism feels like it has been more sharply building maybe over the past 10 years from a lower baseline, is that oftentimes it's these movements need the foil. They grow in moments when capitalism isn't serving people, and in many ways I wonder, could this, like, this is so messed up, but like, could this be an opportunity for them to not cash in, but it's ultimately, this is the problem. What we're talking about is a business problem. What we're talking about is access to the ability to make this art so that they can continue to make more art. We wouldn't be talking about Disco Elysium 2 if the first one hadn't sold well. So which sucks. That's the reality we're in. But there are millions of people around the world who passionately love these games.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if Robert Kurvitz does something, it will be crowdfunded.
Right.
Period.
But isn't that funny? Like, like, it's not funny. It's awful. And it's I'm doing a very, I am not a scholar of these thoughts or concepts. So I'm doing a great disservice to the level of conversation you can have around this. But, if they get a shitload of money from people to make this or fight a case, or whatever, VC money is hard to fight against, let's be honest, in court. They can,
for sure. And the other thing is that Kurvitz is very clear that they envision themselves as he's used the phrase that they're the last Soviet artists, and he essentially, the way that they viewed themselves when they were working on this is in the tradition of other Soviet artists, playwrights and painters and filmmakers and stuff, and the kind of grand historical perspective that a lot of those artists viewed themselves in is that they were contributing to this process, not that they were making a movie to watch next year that would be forgotten, but to make a piece of art that would contribute to this eras-long process of change, of human change. I mean, not to get too eschatological, but like the way Marx viewed it was that
I'm always saying Jeremy's getting way too eschatological on this podcast. Tone down your eschatologicality, will you?
I love eschatology. No, but like it's this idea that that history is a process, and that things happen in response to events. And I mean, this is why I called it a Hegelian world building project, is because the whole basis of Elysium is that it is looking at history and realizing, in the way that Hegel and Marx did, is that like history unfolds as a process. Things happen as a response to other things. And so if Disco Elysium is a game that made more people aware of some of the insidious features of capitalism, and if this event is another piece in that puzzle that makes people more aware of some of these insidious machinations that exist under capital, then, I mean, ultimately it's achieving the goal of the piece of art, which is to instill in people an urgency, a sense of urgency, that there needs to be some level of change, that we need to value artists and people with heart and people with creativity and people who make things, not people who own things.
Yeah, very well said. Very well said. We'll have to keep our eyes on this one. It is definitely the ending of the first chapter, kind of feels like, of this story, at least.
For sure.
That's what we hope when it comes to it. So yes, our thoughts with all those who've been given the marching orders, and everyone else at Zaum who's doing the good work. To be continued. I never gave a shout out to all of our Battle Pass holders. Speaking of capitalism, let's get the big gulp.
Get
right
them in
here.
there.
Let's get it. Cody Krieger, Forrest Pruitt, Andy Fagan, Cameron Ladd, George Sikotis, Jacob Godservant, Tohir Tilyev. Thank you all so much. And all of our patrons over patreon.com/Noclip. That was not intentionally put there, I promise.
Also, I don't know if I'm misusing eschatological. It's the study of the apocalypse, but I'm viewing it as like an inevitable process moving towards an end result that is like pulling everything through history. So apologies to any of the classic scholars out there who are screaming at their iPhones.
Yeah, both of them.
All three of them.
I like that. Apocalypse is a word that sort of conducted or created a new sort of meaning. So too has Ragnarok, actually, which is very similar. Which in that, well, Ragnarok is more of a sort of a resetting rather than an end.
Yeah.
And apocalypse is, apocalypse has become a sort of a word we associate with, I don't know, some sort of violent threat that ends a moment or something. Anyway, let's move on in. Let's have a bit of a fucking change of what's the worst change? What's the worst, like, we can go Gotham Knights, Vampire Survivor, one of those. What do you think?
Dealer's choice.
Frank's been sitting there for a while, so let's talk about Vampire Survivor on Steam Deck. Dude, you got a deck, right?
Yeah, I have a big deck. No, wait, no, I got the Steam Deck. It is pretty big though. Wait, where is it? I don't have to show it off. I finally got the Steam Deck, and it's so funny. Like, there's so like Disco Elysium is one of the main games I want to play on it. Persona 4, I've spent like cumulatively not even that much, but I would say 5 hours just like in little bursts playing Vampire Survivors, and it's the coziest experience in the world. Sometimes I'll put on a podcast or music, or sometimes it really feels like I'm a kid again, because Vampire Survivors has that chiptune Game Boy like crunchy arcade sound effects, and it's like, man, it's the best. It's all you need. That's all you need on the Steam Deck. So I really adore it, and I feel like we talked about Vampire Survivor early on. As this was did this game come out this year or last year?
It's technically not out yet. It came out in early access, I feel like, this year. I actually messaged them today to see if there was any interest.
Cool.
But they just put out a tweet. It's coming out of early access into 1.0 on October 20th, which is Thursday. So you'll hear this on a Friday, people. So the Thursday after next, on the 20th. It's coming out. But yeah, it's funny. It is like one of the most played games, I think, on Steam Deck. Everyone's playing it. I was talking to someone else yesterday who just got the Steam Deck, and all they've been playing is Vampire Survivor.
It's awesome. And I think it's the same thing like when Switch came out. Like, there's a lot of indie games that got a big boost from it. Like, I'm eager to see like this new era of like Steam Deck games where like, what are going to be the major like system sellers, or the things that everyone gravitates towards. What's perfect for it, because it feels so good. I still haven't experienced. I haven't like tried many other games on the Steam Deck, but I was really stoked with it.
Cult of the Lamb, I think I've mentioned a bunch of times at this stage. I played on entirely on Steam Deck. A game that I probably wouldn't have played on PC sitting down anyway. I would have done it on console, but it was perfect on Steam Deck. Last week I actually began and finished Portal 2 on Steam Deck.
Oh, wow.
Which was, I would say, the first like PC game. You know what I mean? Like capital P, capital C, capital B, PC. Sorry, G, capital G.
What are you spelling?
Big Bame. I don't know what the fuck is going on. Don't know. It's big. Something's in this big gulp. I think I got
Hell yeah.
some.
I think you
too
got
much gas
laced with LSD at the
end.
gas station.
Exactly.
LSB.
Yeah. The first kind of game that I was a little bit. I would like to play this on mouse and keyboard, but totally got got used to it. You know, it's not a very Twitch shootery game or anything. You're just, you know, doing puzzles, and they do a lot of work to like help you with accuracy in Portal 2. You know, there's a bit of sticking to like, you know, where you need to go. Yeah, but that was a fun time. Portal 2 is a good video game, in case you didn't know. Yeah, so yeah, anything else on Vampire on the Steam Deck you're gonna play? You're just gonna keep doing? Is there anything else that's tickling your fancy, or did you buy a, you know, I don't know,
think what I'm doing-
$600 console so you could play a $2 game?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna wait for this because I kind of messed up. Is like I invest a lot of my games are on PS5 or Xbox because I like detaching from the PC to play video games. I don't like I'll there's some Steam games I'll play for Noclip or like streaming, but if I want to play video games, I don't want to be at my work computer. It gives me, you know,
Amen.
yeah. But now it's like shit. There's all these games that I have on Xbox or PS5, and it's like fuck. I'd rather just play on the Steam Deck. So I think I'm gonna wait for like a sale and just go nuts and scoop them up. But Disco Elysium was like the major thing. I want to treat that like a comic book and sit down and just enjoy it, and Persona 4 and some other things.
Terrific.
But the major game I just want to talk about for a second is the major game I've been playing the last like few weeks. There's a new team shooter out where you had to play objectives and focus on it. It's the game everyone's talking about. Gundam Evolution is so good. I think it feels like a multiplayer version of Shogun. Like Shogun, the giant mech shooter from like the 90s.
Oh, Shogun.
Yeah.
Shogo.
Shogun? Yeah,
Shogo Mobile Armored Division.
Yes,
Is that what you're talking
yes,
about?
yeah. So I'm
Not,
obviously
not Shogun Total War.
no, no. So Shogo, obviously inspired by Gundam and mecha anime, but yeah, Gundam Evolution is basically Gundam Overwatch, but it's so fun. It's free to play. I bought the battle pass because you unlock chibi anime shit, and I really like it.
Oh,
And
do you like
what-
chibi anime shit, Frank?
Oh,
Do you?
yeah. I love it. And it's really fun because like I dabbled in Overwatch 2 last night and I played for like an hour and then I just had the
you
realization
got in.
like yeah, dude, yeah, like at 2 a.m. the queue time was like now 5 minutes. So I was like, all right,
my
jumped in.
God.
And like I'll play more Overwatch. I like that Overwatch is out just because it's a free game that all my friends are gonna have. Sure, I'll play a few rounds, but I played and it's like, oh, this is just Overwatch. I kind of bounced back quickly, so my whole squad we quit and we went back into Gundam Evolution, and
wow.
I had so much more fun. Gundam Evolution, it's very similar to Overwatch. It's objective based, but if you just want to shoot and get kills, it feels so good. Every Gundam is basically a different class, a different character. I don't know much about Gundam, but I'm eager to get into it. But I love all the robot designs. It has the scale of Gundam, so you don't see little people, but you see little cars and little buildings. So it's like you're almost like kaiju, like just running around giant cities, blowing up other robots. And it's got like the anime sound effects. So it's just like, it's so good. So I really recommend it.
Here's a question. It's got mixed reviews on Steam.
Yeah.
So where's that coming from? Does it have terrible monetization? Is there something else going on?
I don't play competitively. Like I do not care. I just want to shoot stuff. So I wonder if you're like high level, is stuff broken or
Balancing maybe or
yeah,
something? Or
for
yeah.
me, yeah, I don't know, and I didn't gleam it because like all of my friends, like it's a fun game. It feels like it's like our Call of Duty. It's like we just get on and we talk shit and like and what I like about like even though it's a free to play game on Steam, the chat isn't very toxic because it's all just anime nerds and we're all typing, "What's your favorite Gundam show?" "Oh, I like 8th MS Team, War in the Pocket." And it's like a little robot club and man, and it's funny. Last night, after we were playing it, after Overwatch came out, and we kept running into the same squad, and they started letting us win because we were getting
that's
our
too
asses
funny.
kicked. So yeah, I don't know. There's free cool team games out. There's Overwatch, but I really adore Gundam Evolution, so I recommend checking that out if you're an anime fan. If you just want a free shooter, it plays well. Apparently, one thing I heard is it doesn't run on Steam Deck because of its anti-cheat thing.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a fun surprise. Gundam Evolution. It's on PC now. It's coming to consoles, I think, in November. But by November, Modern Warfare 2 will be out, which I can't wait. But yeah, I liked Gundam Evolution.
Terrific. I was playing I don't know if it's free to play. I was playing a shooter last week that I cannot talk about. It was a closed situation. Although one of my contemporaries did talk about it, so I was like, I don't know if we were supposed to talk about it. So I'm not going to talk about it, but hopefully we'll get to talk about it in the future. It was a good time. I mean, maybe it was a good time. I couldn't. Who knows? Maybe. Who
knows?
Who knows? Unknowable. Gotham Knights. This is the last game we have today. Gotham Knights it is the Batman. I don't want to say it's a follow up to Arkham. It is not, but it is a Warner Brother Games Montreal action role playing game co-op. set in a similar sort of world to those Batman Arkham games. W Games Montreal worked on which one? They worked on Arkham Origins, didn't they? So, and was it Rocksteady who did the other ones? Or am I getting that wrong? Rocksteady,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I think so, right?
That sounds right.
I should know this. So they worked on Origins, which came out a while ago now. I'm not sure if they're also a work for hire folk, or I guess there was a bunch of DLC for Arkham Knight as well that maybe they helped out on. But Gotham Knights is basically a game in that ilk. It is an open world game set in a perpetual night kind of Gotham. The 4 characters you can play are, and I'm not a comic book person, so please forgive me. It is I believe, I'm gonna say Batgirl, Robin, old original Robin, and big muscly Robin who died and was brought back to life. Those are the people as I know them. I think it's Red Hood. One of them is Nightwing. Is that the other guy?
Yeah.
Nightwing. Frank's nodding. Okay, he knows. And it is. I played a demo that I should put my hands up. I had a hard out an hour and 45 minutes into this, so I didn't do the final boss fight. I was right at it, but I had to stop, and I also had to gun my way through some of the open world stuff. But I played a couple of missions of this thing. I played a bunch of the characters, and my thoughts are, I think first of all, the Arkham games were not necessarily my bag. I enjoyed the first one quite a lot, and I don't think I played the other two. The world and story stuff is not my forte. I've just not that all. Any comic book stuff I enjoy is them on the more grittier side of things. Like I do like graphic novels, and everyone's read Watchmen, right? But like I'll write East of West, and stuff that's saga stuff like that's a bit more, I don't know, less fantastical. Maybe that's ridiculous to say, but I don't know. For whatever reason, we all have our own tastes, and I don't really have a predisposition to this sort of stuff anyway. So it wouldn't necessarily be a game that I'd be going out and wanting to play anyway. I will say that the other thing is I played this through Parsec, which if people don't know, Parsec is obviously the game where you can, or the software system that you can use to remotely play video games. This has really opened up the world of press previews. It basically allows people to, from anywhere in the world, to allow you to preview a game. So I was sat right here with a controller playing the game, which is really cool. Of course, in the year of 2022, that means also that I was playing a game with a little bit of input lag, which is to be expected using Parsec. And also, it's a lush 4K game that's coming out on new consoles, and I was streaming it, so it's never going to look as good. So take all those things into account, first of all. What I would say about it is, to me, it felt, in the little bit that I played, there's a lot of game in this. So there's a big open world. There's loads of different types of missions. There's 4 characters you can basically swap to, not at any time, like mid-mission, but you go back to a hub area, basically, your sort of base, and you can go into any one of them at that stage, which means that presumably every mission has 4 different cutscene versions, voiceovers, all that sort of stuff. Also, you can play this game co-op with, I'm guessing, up to 4 people. I don't actually know. I played single player, so that also has to be part of it. So just in terms of the amount of game that the studio had to make, I can imagine that this was a fairly large undertaking, especially as this is probably one of the first round of games that is like a deep COVID developed game, a game that was like not near finish when it started. And perhaps I'm laying all these caveats in ahead of time to sort of soften the blow a little bit. But to me, it felt like a perfectly, good open world, action game that wasn't necessarily breaking the mold in any way that, was compelling to me. If you enjoyed these worlds, I can imagine it being interesting. The combat was fairly, I was playing on, I think, medium difficulty. It was, there was a certain element of the timing that you got from those old Arkham games, but it wasn't particularly tricky. They tend to make these press things easier, though. So, again, take that with a pinch of salt. Some journalists can't play games,
It's a real Cuphead situation.
I get in trouble here. It's kind of true. So I feel like it's a big game. It's kind of reminds me of, I don't know, there's other games like this. I feel like Avengers might be another one of those where like they had to make a game that was multiplayer as well, and just by virtue of that, you can't have these you can't like dial in the gameplay. There's just so much variables, there's so much content to make that it just kind of changes the type of game. So I think if you're going in expecting like one of these super authored games like Batman, it's a little bit less so than that. It follows the same sort of design, or I don't want to say speak for the developers, but it feels like those games in many ways, but definitely I would say because of the co-op nature of it, again, a little bit less dialed in. It's like its closest ally to me is like something like a Guardians of the Galaxy or the Avengers game. I will say the Avengers game is not an open world game, and either is Guardians of the Galaxy, so I won't undersell it in that respect. But also, the open world felt more like. Let me think about this. It didn't feel vast like a Horizon Zero Dawn, or like it felt like a video game city. You know what I mean? Like there was a lot of familiar beats.
Does it feel like Spider-Man at all? Because I feel like that's a pretty
That's
nice
actually
scale.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think Spider-Man is actually a good so that like it doesn't feel like it feels like a video game world where you are and a lot of the what would you call it, like traversal is Spider-Man-esque in a way. You have a hook that sort of like hooks you onto stuff. Each of the characters has their own way of traversing the world. The ghost guy, whatever his name, what's his name, Nightwing, is just like kind of jump. He's able to like make ghost clouds or something and jump across
sick.
them. I'm not quite sure. And then I think it's Robin's able to like straight up just have a drone teleport him. It's very it's fantastical in a way that I don't know the source material, so it felt a little bit weird to me.
Were you able to play as Red Hood? Or does he have like shooting
Guns,
combat?
yeah, dude, I was just shooting people.
Sick. That's why,
Yeah.
Red Hood kicks ass. It's just Batman with guns. Like,
Yeah, he was just shooting folks, like murdering folks. There was one level I was doing where it was like a bunch of civilians who had like clearly had like mind control do on it, and I was just shooting them.
Oh. Yeah.
It was kind of funny.
I'm looking forward to this game. Like I didn't realize it was coming out so soon. Like I said, I was kind of
October 21st. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
I was really burned on Saints Row, so I'm still hungry for like a simple open world type game, and I'm like, this might be it.
I would not compare it. I think, let's be clear, it's not Saints Row. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not that. It's what I would say. This feels to me like a solid 7 out of 10 game. It's one of those. You know what I mean? I think mileage is going to vary a lot. I think if you do co-op with this, you probably enjoy it a lot more. I don't think it's for me necessarily. But there's a lot of game in here. So, I think if you're into the source material or if you like those Arkham games, but I also want to stress that I don't think it's hard to tell because like so much of the final polish of an experience is down to, the crispness of the controls, the sharpness of the especially in a game like this where it's an open world city, so sharp textures and contrast is really important in a way that like we understand the world of video compression maybe better than most people, and I know when I'm playing like, oh, this is going to look super sharp when you play it on these vistas will look even more impressive, that type of stuff. I do like the setup of of Gotham is kind of neat. Like it's not full like Batman and Robin, like that.
Oh man.
Who is that director? Who was it? It was
The
God.
old ones?
Yeah.
The Tim Burton
Yeah,
ones?
yeah. Thank you, Tim Burton. There you go. Yeah. See, even I love
Yeah.
it's that on the tongue. Yeah, it's not quite full Tim Burton, but it's it's the lighting and stuff is pretty cool. And I think it's always at nighttime as well.
Joel
but yeah.
Schumacher. Sorry, that was the one I was thinking. The
Oh,
super
right.
insane Batman Forever, where it's like so ridiculous.
Yeah, that stuff. You're right. Maybe that was
Oh.
what I was thinking of actually.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
it was
Is that the
yeah,
super
you're
gritty
right.
one?
Sorry,
yeah,
you're right.
yeah.
Yeah, with the crazy big
Everyone
Atlas
has neon.
holding the.
It's very like
neon.
Baz Luhrmann. Yeah, everyone has. It's so ridiculous.
Sorry, you're right. It was the Joel
would
Schumacher
love
stuff.
A
Yeah.
Baz Luhrmann Batman movie. I would see. That'd be awesome.
So yeah, I think previews are up today, so folks
Sick.
will have their own takes on it. But yeah, it was cool to play it. Yeah, mileage may vary on that one. We'll just have to see. I think it's for certain people will dig it more than others for sure.
Cool.
Yeah, It'll come out in a
Parsec is
couple
also
weeks.
pretty good. I played the Cuphead DLC with my buddy from Boston over Parsec, and
Cool.
on the last boss, he died on phase 1 of however many phases are in that boss, like 3 or 4 or whatever. And I finished the boss fight over Parsec in a
Wow.
very difficult, precise game. So Parsec, if you have 2 good connections, Parsec is really good for co-op and stuff. It like changed my relationship to playing co-op games.
That's neat. I can see
Yeah.
how Cuphead's graphics might be easier to
Yes.
sort of, there's a bit more stillness there. There's not depth. Depth is such a problem because it's like textures getting bigger as well as moving, so there's a sort of muddiness. And also the contrast in this is so razor thin because it's so dark, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like the edge of a building is slightly more bright, so that type
Yeah.
of thing. So it's harder to, some of that
We
gets
also
lost
played
in the wash.
Danny, you were a Genesis guy. We played Gunstar Heroes. You ever played
Oh,
Gunstar
yeah.
Heroes?
I wasn't a big Gunstar fan, no.
It was
on the
okay.
Mega Drive.
It was Mega Drive. It was just okay. It was Turtles in Time with guns, but it was pretty fun. I thought you might know it. So
I used to play. It's a cool looking game. I used to play. What was the one with the cowboys? Sunset Riders.
oh, Sunset Riders
Oh,
is
yeah,
great.
that rules.
It's a damn good game.
That game is
Bury
so
me
good.
with my money.
Bury me with my money. Exactly. Let's call it a podcast, folks. Hopefully
Cool.
this recorded okay. It said Jeremy's
Yeah.
voice. Jeremy sounds great to me, but it on the little dial here it says that he's low, or it
really?
looks like he could be. So I don't know. We'll have to see.
Check.
We'll just have to see. Sounds good to me, but I'll take it out in post.
Compress me.
Exactly, I'll do it. Thank you all so much for hanging out, folks who are watching this bad boy as well. Thanks so much for listening, wherever you are. Support the podcast, fund our documentaries. Sorry, if you'd like to support the podcast, fund our documentaries, and get access to all of our bonus episodes in the official Discord. Head over to patreon.com/Noclip. We're at Noclip Video on all the social medias. He's at Jeremy B. Jane. That's at Frank Howley. And I'm at Danny O'Dwyer. For those who are looking for Jesse as well, Jesse is back from holiday, but he's stepping back into a production role. He kind of, he's got a bunch of, I don't want to speak for him, but he's got a bunch of work going on, and he's kind of thinking about himself professionally, and he wanted to step back from, there's a lot of work. I feel like there's a lot of work doing a lot of like extracurricular for this podcast as well, which is probably not fair. So maybe he'll pop his voice in every now and again, but for the moment he's going to be on the tech side. He's also working on an edit for us at the moment for the Neon White episode of Developer Breakdown, which will be coming to Noclip sometime soon. Jeremy, you're coming in today to record some Crystal Dynamics B-roll while I go and regale these children about Ireland.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm excited for it, and also the Tomb Raider documentary is very long and getting close to done. I have a big fat 2 terabyte file to hand off to you today, so
Terrific.
Get psyched, everybody.
Thank you very much. Frank, what are you doing for the rest of your day?
Let's see, black and white gameplay capture, which I'm looking
cool.
forward to, and then this weekend, this Saturday in Long Beach, I've amassed like a group of like 8 friends, and we're going to Shacktoberfest.
Shacktoberfest?
Yeah, Shaquille O'Neal licensed his name to like a haunted like fair in Long Beach. It looks so trashy.
Wow.
I can't wait. So I'll have a report on that next week.
Wow, what a
Shacktoberfest.
mishmash of vibes, you know?
Yeah.
Shacktober.
I'll be curious
Yeah.
to see how those
Yeah.
Shake out, like what the
Like,
how much October spookiness and how much Shaq is in the mix.
What's going to be there? Like a big Charles Barkley that eats you or something? Or
There's a Frankenstein Shaq like giant blow up doll. Like I don't know. I'm excited. It'll be fun.
man, Shacktober. Can't wait. Hear all about that. Hear about the kids and the Ireland and all that sort of
Oh,
stuff.
man.
Maybe
Happy
hear more
Shacktober,
news.
everyone.
Happy
Shacktober.
Shacktober. Exactly. Wherever you are, where whatever you celebrate, happy Shacktober to you. And we'll see if Danny can stick the landing on this outro while this music is playing. It's a real like, sort of moment. Yeah. Okay, we're out of here. Bye.
Bye.